Zig on the top. Today on the show, we have drummer, composer extraordinaire Jeff Tripoli returning. Jeff is a New York-based drummer, and check this out. So Jeff has a new album out called Natural Habitat. It's an avant-garde, percussion-driven journey that explores rhythm through natural materials and experimental techniques. It's available on all the streaming platforms, and in this conversation, we get deep and we get spiritual. So, buckle up for a good one. Now, Jeff, he does a lot of things. He's got a lot of projects going, and I admire someone who takes on all these different aspects of the creative field. Jeff also has a new project out called Mendings of Time. It's a duo psychedelic percussion ensemble, and Mendings of Time have their first concert that's recorded live, and it's on their YouTube channel. So that's Mendings of Time. Jeff also plays in a couple groups such as the Town Pants and Sons of Grunge. If you hear anything you like, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Jeff. And if you want to get into a deeper dive into Jeff's career history, we have a previous conversation where we do that. And without further ado, this is my conversation with Jeff Tripoli. Last time we dove more, we went into your history, and so I feel like with this conversation, let's kind of just hone in on this new record.
Yeah.
So natural, as far as avant-garde playing goes, one, it's a really cool, I like the with the opening track, you start off by hearing just birds, kind of sounds you would hear outside, and I think at one point in everyone's, I would say for everyone at one point, this thought has to come through their head, but especially for music students or people who study music, there's one point where you realize anything could be in a beat. You know what I mean? Anything could have if you count long enough, you can find a measure of something. If you're dedicated to that abstractive thought. But in that which in itself is a huge kind of philosophy, a mindset that opens up a wild, train of thought, which I hope to get into with you. But as far as this record, I have that track had to be chosen specifically and for a concept. But I guess what I'm asking is with this record, is that what brought up the kind of avant-garde approach in this sense and the idea of natural?
Yeah. One morning I was just up early and I heard the birds outside, and I just, like you said, I counted, made measures. So I would just simply count to 4 and then started hearing the melody of the birds in their rhythm. So it's sort of like letting nature play, right? If you put it in this framework of something as simple as 4/4 or whatever you want to choose, you can just kind of frame it and then picture how it's being played, and think about, the world is your instrument. So there's a lot of found sounds on this record, and there's a lot of field recordings. And I just started thinking about things differently and just thinking about everyday life and all the noises that I hear just in my world. So I would just, I think it was 4:00 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning in summertime, I went out and recorded the birds and used that as a backdrop to, perform along with it and sort of interpretate it. It was really fun to do. There's another track that does the same kind of thing called Frogs. And even more so, frogs are way more rhythmic when you hear them really going at it, right? So it was really fun. A lot of people say they can't tell which ones are the frogs and which ones are me. But yeah, it's really simple. It's put it in a framework of a time signature and then just listen around you. Or, there's a million ways to interpretate the sounds in our world,
It's with this experience with the birds, as a drummer, I have a feeling that wasn't the first time this kind of occurred to you. Can you kind of do you have a memory of the first time nature in the world and rhythm kind of pointed itself out to you?
That's a really good question. I can't really pinpoint a specific time that happened, but it reminds me of a saying. They say that the drum is the oldest instrument in the world, and the oldest drum in the world being the human heart. So it kind of ties in with this like universe thing. And also, I think a lot of it came through when I started reading Rick Rubin's book.
Okay.
Um,
Creative Act.
yeah, The Creative Act. And he talks a lot about trying to be sort of like an antenna that's picking up signals from your world around you. It's like cues for like ideas for song titles or ideas for this and that. So that really sparked an interest in doing that as well, was Rick Rubin's book. And I got that from my fiance. She got that for me, I believe, on Christmas 2 years ago. So it's kind of new for me too.
I love it, man.
It's really good.
I've been with Rick's book. I mean, I got a copy of it when it like came out. I remember hearing an interview with him like months before it came out, and I was like, that's the type. I don't know. Like for me, that's the type of book I love. Like a thought processy book, you know what I mean, where you can kind of dive in and like take your own like thing from it. It may be just like I'm sure it's a typical like creative type of like literature to be like into. But I remember, waiting for that book to come out and it's when I got it, I started reading it, and I read it really slow. I'm not even done with it, if I'm being honest. That one I've kind of like put on the back burner.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and
it's a lot, and the chapters are like 3 pages long.
Yeah,
but it's so like as simple as you could phrase these statements, but it's really just so much to take in. And plus, he's a kind of guy that's like really into yoga, meditation, and all that stuff too.
Are you?
I'm not so much. I'm into the idea of it, but physically, I'm not doing it. My meditation's on the drums. But at the same time, along with the theme of this record, I wanted something to be very meditative, very soothing. Because there's so many people out there right now that kind of are looking forward to something that they can listen to meditate or get lost and get out of everyday stress. So it kind of ties in with that. I think it's a pretty meditative record compared to my other ones, but I don't myself practice meditation. I probably should start doing it.
It's hard. Like I kind of went through a spat with doing the meditation bit. I was in a relationship.
How was it for you?
It was interesting. Like I was in a relationship with someone who would go to we would go to a Buddhist temple. They had like Tuesday night meditation. And at that time, I was always like, anything organized, it's not for me. But still going there, there was this putting yourself in a place to just kind of be there was some like enlightening moments. For me, I was kind of like, it was like a 2-hour thing, right? It was a 2-hour bit. And like, I was so caught up in getting other stuff and finding that meditation, just like you said, through the drums with my endeavors. Like I'd be like, I'd reach a point where I'm like, okay, I feel good. Now I need to go work on something. You know what I mean? And
it's a lot.
yeah. And I think like when you do what you do and like you only have so much time to like really kind of hone in on your own thing, like it really does kind of become your own meditation of a sort. And like, so like, but now years later, I went back and it came into it with a different perspective. But there was, I think, making time to just work on focus in a world in which we are so distracted is invaluable. And like,
it's a balance that we all need.
Right.
And sometimes the only way to get it is with music. And also that brings people together. So you have a lot of community aspects with the music too that really are healing. And talk about mental illness. People with mental illness of any kind can listen to music and, it helps people deal with things. It helps them understand themselves better. I had a pretty good moment of self-discovery throughout my whole career, recording my own drum records. And that itself is its own meditation, having the patience to follow the path. There's a saying that Ethan Hawke had in an interview that he did at some point. He talks about giving yourself the right to be creative, allowing yourself to be creative. And one of the points he said was, there's no path until you walk it. And so when I started making my drum records, I really didn't know what to do. And I just started throwing paint at the canvas kind of thing. And eventually I started like seeing how I'm forming myself as a musician in my own right. So that itself, the self-discovery, I think, is a really important thing that ties in with meditation, which is probably a little bit of what you're going through that you were just saying there, with the going to the Buddhist temple. So I think the self-discovery thing is a huge aspect of what I went through on this record, with like using newfound sounds and field recordings and seeing like, exactly how I wanted to further develop what I did for my last record.
One thing too that in this record, like that, and I think it's interesting with the combination of found sounds and like other elements. There's one track, I think it's either second or third, and like you were counting like it's like Takatiti or Taka. I couldn't really make out what you were saying, or that might not even been you. But also that kind
that was me.
Okay, which is kind of like I don't know if it's coming from like an Indian classical, like how they kind of count. I don't know if or if this was just kind of, you know what I mean, just random things.
No, it's not random. It comes from a long story short. I have a mentor whose name is Butch Norton, and Butch Norton had studied at Cal Arts percussive classes with John Bergamo. John Bergamo was a classically trained percussionist with hand drums. He traveled out to the East to study with a lot of the tabla players. And what he brought back, one of the things was the what we call the John Bergamo rhythm scale. So rather than counting 1, 2, 3, 4, it's takatina. And you do that like takatina genete is a way to count 7, right? Takatina genete. Yeah. So it's just a way to like sort of speak it without going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And with that, there's like a lot of ways that you can use it. My buddy Butch released a video that he gives out to his students that explains it. And I could try to pass that video along to you.
Sure.
So you can check it out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways you can use it.
I would love, well, sorry.
Yeah, but it's just a cool way to really count the syllables, and you can really get very deep with that kind of thing. Another meditative kind of thing is to have these syllables rather than saying the words of the number.
I think what works for me as a I'm not a drummer. I know some drum basics, you know what I mean? Like, but I wouldn't book myself in the band as a drummer unless you wanted to be a little avant-garde. But like, but the idea of like syllabic, mnemonic devices, as far as like remembering a rhythmic feel, works really well for me. So like when I teach some like drumming basics, I kind of use words, you know what I mean? Like, because that we talk in a way, but like there's some words we say the same, where if we switch the stress of the word, we wouldn't say it like that. Right. So like, that's really cool. And that's cool. And like, especially with a tricky, like time signature, like 7 and I feel like as a musician, you're more open to like words out of like other languages to get that kind of mnemonic device into your arsenal. But that's really cool.
Yeah. It's really fun, and it makes it easier, if you believe it or not, once you really get to know it and practice the Bergamo rhythm scale, it makes it easier to do some really cool things. So if you take 7, you can divide that 4 and 3. Takatina, takati, takatina, takati, rather than takatina, ge, right? So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And that itself gives you a different rhythm. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, takatina, genete, takatina, genete. So there's like a whole different way that you can structure these things, which is, I believe, an Eastern study with percussion. It's just the way they think. They don't think in terms of like hitting the crash on the 1 and playing in 4/4 and keeping the backbeat on the 2 and the 4 kind of thing. They're more like speaking in phrases. So you'd have phrases of like 13 and then 9 and then 5 and then 2, but they're not like sitting there conceptually thinking of let's put together those numbers. They're just speaking. And that just happens to be sort of like where the period or the exclamation point or the question mark is at the end of the sentence kind of thing. So it's more like speaking than it is actually, counting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. And like ultimately, like I think when we examine music, it's a form of communication in a way. And like some of the best, like taking another lane, like some of the best lyrics are the ones that are like simply said, you know, with like a twist of cleverness that make you think and like convey the message clearly. And like, or like when you see two musicians playing together and they're trading fours and it feels like they're just having a conversation. I think that's, you know what I mean? Like that's really as going through music school, that's one of those like Victor Wootenisms that make the most sense, that it should feel like, you know, it's a conversation. And like, I definitely,
absolutely. Yeah.
One thing I've been getting really into, and like, I as far as it's been like a deep dive into some kind of lyric structure and writing and how syllables line up, and that kind of dives more into poetry and such. And like as you tear apart these words and as we read them, we have a rhythm when we don't even think about it, you know?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Another interesting thing that I picked up from, if you're familiar with Billy Martin, who's the drummer with Medeski, Martin and Wood. I had a real quick conversation with him at one point, and we were talking about doing many rhythms at once, what I believe he calls rhythmic harmony, which could be something as simple as like 2 against 3. If you have listeners that are musicians, they'll know what 2 against 3 is, but that's one rhythm in 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And the second rhythm against that goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you get a rhythmic harmony, which is just 2 or more rhythms put together. And I said, man, that's really complicated stuff. But then he goes, well, when we walk, you're still talking to people. So if you think about the act of walking against the act of talking simultaneously, that's really complicated too. It's just a question of how you look at it. As somebody who's learning a new language, it would be very complicated. But if you've been speaking the language your whole life, it's just second nature. And then you can kind of be very free with it, which is another thing that I tried to explore on this record, was a lot more to do with the performance and less to do with the concept.
That's like, that's super, like, that's pretty profound. Like I've never like, and maybe there's just like the kind of weight that because we learn all this stuff in one kind of fashion, and then the kind of introduce something like we're putting two opposing things together. And it's those little aha moments, like, oh, you know, you eat and drive, you know, you can, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever, like, and you're like, there's
we just
like,
can't be on the phone and drive.
Right. No, don't do that. So if anyone's listening to this on their phone whilst driving, make sure it's in the pocket, or that you started it 20 minutes ago before you hit that cruise.
Hands-free. But it's very interesting because if you think about trying to drive in text, which is obviously a terrible idea, but it doesn't work because you're distracted visually. And a lot of my students, when they're trying to learn something new, they'll look and they'll watch. But I actually tell them, close your eyes and listen. And they get it a lot more quickly, and I think a little bit easier when they're just listening, if that's the perspective they're choosing, is to listen rather than watch.
Interesting. So like, because I gotta imagine too, with like, for me, when like when a groove like really clicks and I feel like I got it, it's a feeling. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Like
just listening is all it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why it's interesting. Like, eventually becomes like a type of feel too. Like, I find when I'm teaching, because I teach as well, and we've talked about that I think in our last conversation.
Oh, cool.
And when it comes to like, there's some things that like, as a musician, like or any creative, there's that kind of endless cosmic carrot you're chasing, and like, and that's great, because if it ever was reached, it would be boring, and like, but there's all these things like, if you go back to when you started, you're like, oh man, I got this down. Holy shit, you know what I mean? I did the thing, like, but it may seem super simple to you now, but when you first started, it was hard. So like, when I'm teaching kids like how to just switch between chords and hold down this, and like, I'm like, oh man, I do that all the time, and I sing while I'm doing that. You know, it's talking and walking. And
the more you do it, the easier it gets. They say you have to put in 10,000 hours.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
And like, but it's so interesting too, like the to reflect on that and be like, I guess I did do something. But like,
Yeah. What's really cool is I've been going back to playing like a lot of grunge music. I just, a few, I started playing drums along to Nirvana. I was, I'm going to date myself here, but I don't care. I was 10 years old in 1993 when I started playing drums. And a lot of musicians, older musicians that are old enough to have seen the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in 1960, I think it was 1964. They had like that quote unquote Beatles moment where everybody all of a sudden wanted to be a musician. Well, mine was Nirvana Live and Loud on MTV 1993. So I got a chance now to play all these songs again because I'm in this new band, Sons of Grunge. And I go back and play these. I'm like, oh my God. I still have it. I don't know how, I haven't played these songs in years, but I still remember all the practice that I had when I was, 10 and 12 years old. So to go back and play them again is really cool. And like you're saying, it's just a feel thing and it never really leaves. Once you have it, it's a bit like riding a bike. And I don't want to say that too freely because it takes a lot of practice to do these things. But to have that feel in your arsenal is really, it's awesome because you can go back to it and you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like it was yesterday.
It's crazy how much of it is like slow, monotonous, like practice of a thing, and then eventually just becomes an overarching feel. 6/8 is a feel. I can explain it very clearly, but when I do it, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm feeling it more than maybe thinking it, you know what I mean? And I think that's different for everybody, but like,
I believe that's actually kind of a true thing for a lot of musicians is, well, whether or not they realize it, you have to go through the moment where you realize this, that, a drummer, specifically speaking of a drummer, the more they think, kind of the more they get thrown off. So the feel is what it's all about. Like you can think about it a ton during practice. You can think about it all you need to, but it's eventually supposed to condition you so that you don't have to think about it. So you can play from the heart, right? Yeah. But that's really cool, man. It's good to know that you're teaching still. I've got a few students still as well. And I like having a low number of students because I get to really focus on them as people and individuals and not really get overwhelmed with like 30 students. It's a lot. But I've been having a good time.
Oh, no, I totally, yeah. And it's fun when it's like less, when it's a smaller number, you can, like you said, you can really hone in and like teach them and give them the guidance they need. Because I teach in a school, so my caseload is always full. It's always way more. Yeah. And there's a lot of kids that, it's not their thing, but it's fun to get to try to introduce it,
Yeah.
But kind of jumping back to the record here, one thing I was thinking, is there like any avant-garde like records or musicians that you find that are influence for this type of thought and playing?
Oh, absolutely. I have several specific ones. This is going back quite far. I have going back to Butch Norton. He asked me long ago, about 2 years ago, if I had a cassette tape player. I said no. So I got one, and he sent me a cassette of his project with a man named Ray McNamara, and they were called Damaru. And he sent me a tape, and I'm looking right now. It says 1995. So this tape actually has a song on here called Afro Kent that I sort of covered on my record. So Afro Kent on Natural Habitat is actually a drum cover from a band called Damaru with Butch Norton and Ray McNamara. So that was one huge influence. Another one is Glenn Cochi. Now, Glenn Cochi is the drummer from Wilco, but he's got many, many projects that are just percussion-based or with other orchestral kind of artists that are really influential. And then, of course, there's a lot of other things that have influenced it, such as Pink Floyd records, specifically old Pink Floyd records. Actually, if anybody's out there that's familiar with the old rare Pink Floyd stuff, maybe it's not so rare, but there's an album called More by Pink Floyd, and that whole record opens up with birds. So that was a huge influence. And I was like, I have to do that because it made me feel good every time I heard that song. And then other things like an orchestral, a man named Harry Parch. I think we talked about this in our last interview as well. Harry Parch was an avant-garde composer, and he would make his own instruments by hand that were very unique. And on top of that, he was working with microtonal scales, which is something that I'm hugely influenced by, but not nearly. I can't touch that stuff. I can't read, and B, Harry Parch's music is extremely difficult to read. But he was another huge influence. And of course, things like Mickey Hart, Planet Drum, that was a really influential record too. That's all drums. And oh man, there's so many influences that come through. But I think specifically on this record, it was a lot more of the people that I've met and crossed paths with that have really influenced me. There's been a few that I've come across since the last time we've talked. And I believe one of them, his name was Randy Gloss, and he was a frame drummer. He plays like an Irish bodhrán kind of thing, but he plays it like an Egyptian style with the fingertips rather than what the Irish call the tipper, which is the stick held like a pencil kind of thing, and they strike the drum with a stick. But this is actually more like a hand drumming Egyptian style. So he was another influence, Randy Gloss, really great drummer. And then, of course, there's Kalani Das from World Drum Club. World Drum Club is a YouTube channel out in Los Angeles that's really, really good. He's influenced me with a lot of his videos that come out about new instruments and how to do like live looping sessions and stuff like that. Really good stuff. I mean, I could go on and on, but that's pretty much what comes to mind immediately.
No, that's awesome. Like,
yeah.
And I think, the kind of local interest is what's captured on this record. I mean, even in like, the natural habitat of it, that would make sense. That's what, because like, there was, I'm trying to remember the composer. I can't think of his name.
Another composer was John Cage.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe you're thinking of him.
No. There was this, I have a friend at the library, and every time I see him, he's an avant-garde, like, aficionado. Like, every time, like, I know enough to hang, but he
One of those guys, one of my favorite kind of people.
I know enough to hang, and I know him. Yeah, okay. What? Where? When? Okay, send it to me. You know what I mean? Like, how can I look this up? So I always get a list of crazy records to listen to from this guy, and I can't remember the guy who did it, but the record was called The Black Forest. And it was these two free jazz musicians who went into this. It was in Norway, and they went into the Black Forest, and they recorded this record in a cabin, like or outside the cabin. And the first part of it starts with like just kind of like the natural habitat. Then you hear it was a drummer. God damn! I gotta look this up. And he starts playing.
Was it something called Talking Jazz?
No.
Themes from the Black Forest.
Well, yeah, actually, maybe. Like
I'm just looking it up on YouTube right now.
Ba-boom. There we go. Like, who's the drummer from that record?
I don't know.
Okay,
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. But it just starts off with this guy playing on a log. Like, it's yeah. It's really like that was the first record this guy recommended to me, and it was like so. And at one point, the saxophonist like plays his sax into like a bucket of water or like in a lake. So it's like
that's awesome. Yeah,
it's insane. But like
that's such a cool idea. I love that kind of stuff.
Right, but there's something to like the overall structure to some of this like kind of free avant-garde approach to things that is really
and you said it has to have structure of some sort or some kind of limitation. Otherwise, it's just kind of not really musical, if that makes sense. I've seen a lot of percussive stuff out there on Instagram where people are just kind of like doing really weird stuff just for the sake of doing weird stuff. And I really was that guy. I still am. But I think part of me with this new record, particularly the development since my last ones, was, being more musical and purposeful about the stylings of how I'm playing. But if it's something where it's free jazz, I mean, that's just what it is. It's free jazz. Anything goes. But if at the same time, if it's not purposeful, it's kind of doesn't really make much musical sense, you know?
Man, yeah. But it's all, it's all big form kind of spiritual stuff. Like, because to the freeness and to the large picture thing, there is kind of a like meditation element to it, right? And I think you got to have like a longing for that kind of like bigger abstract thought to like partake in like some of this kind of like avant-garde stuff. And like,
or at least having an open mind is really a lot of what it takes to appreciate what a lot of like our avant-garde artists do, or why they do it, and not only how but why. I think is a really huge question too.
I think, well, especially, I agree. I think the why almost hits harder than the how for some of these like composers and artists. Like, you know what I mean? Like talking about John Cage, like the was it 344 or 433? The silent, the one where there's nothing but silence. Like,
I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, that's a huge influence on the beginning of Flying Pyramids on my record.
That's a cool tune. But the idea, the why for that is more interesting than the actually how. I mean? Like philosophically and kind of like the takeaway from some of this like more abstract stuff and like avant-garde stuff is just that. The more you read into it, the more I think that resonates. And I think maybe that's the meaning and structure that maybe the piece doesn't convey as clearly without it being there.
I think a lot of people are just upset that all they got was silence.
Yeah. But once you like kind of get into the meaning of it, you know what I mean? You're like, damn, that's deep. That's deep, John. I like it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And it goes back again to like field recordings. If you like record traffic, there's a rhythm in there. It's really interesting stuff. It also goes into another thing that I really wanted to keep clear on this record was hearing all this stuff in the background, like the noises in the background, like you can hear me breathing. You hear me at the end of one song, like throw down some jingle bells on the floor because I was done with the take. I just threw them on the floor, but you still hear that, You can hear like people walking on the floor upstairs, I think at one point, maybe not in the, when I'm listening to all the separate audio stems, I'm going through this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, somebody's walking upstairs while I'm doing this, but that's the stuff that makes it really special and unique for me is the experience of capturing all these moments and what they sound like put together and being able to orchestrate that. It's a blessing to be able to do this kind of thing. And a lot of people, I think, today get caught up in the world of, trying to play songs that everybody wants to hear. Everything wants to be on a grid or something like that, or has to be quote unquote perfect. But when you kind of like allow yourself to be like in the Rick Rubin book, The Creative Act, allowing yourself to be open to these different forms of influence, whether it's music or whether it's, kids playing on a swing set, or if you hear somebody like, boiling water. So it's like all these weird places you can find influence.
And I think with building off what you said, like there's so much that is like perfected and perfect and polished and like, it's gone through all the gravel and has come out sanded. You know what I mean? Like, the rare earth before it became the polished like pebble was like something of not a clear form and something that you couldn't trace that shape maybe geometrically, but when you polish it down you can kind of get it into a circle or a solid smooth shape, right? So I think like with how a lot of things are going and like how a lot of things are going to be like unpredictable if it's human or AI. I think the one telling thing is going to be some of these like abstract like pieces that convey more when it's read into more so than following a grid or whatnot. So I think there's going to be like, I hope there's going to be like a cry for the humanity of some of this like kind of deeper thought.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've noticed that a lot of people that have heard my record already are saying like, this is really cool to hear something different and original. I think nothing against the music that's going on with a lot of people today. I still record a lot of that for my friends, and I enjoy it too. But there's something to be said about allowing yourself to be different and be yourself. There's some happy accidents that happen on my record that I really like, that I actually kind of like the most. There's some of the parts that weren't supposed to be there, but they just happened. And you would think that somebody in the opposite field on the other side of the coin would immediately like erase that, do it over again, kind of thing. But to leave it and let the music sort of lead you down the path rather than like forcing it somewhere, I think is not only is it more liberating, but I think it's a lot more fun to see what comes from something without planning it, like improvising,
Yeah. And it's interesting, like, because certain musicians and certain records, we've practiced their mistakes so much. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's some Hendrix runs and some Miles runs that I'm sure were flubs, but because they're kind of put in the frame and the context of like mastery, like no one questions it. And like, I think maybe, ultimately, like, I mean, you see kids wearing t-shirts that say happy accidents with Bob Ross on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that's become like live, laugh, love, but it's also one of those things that like, I don't know if anyone really like takes to heart in that sense. And like, it really takes like something where there's an open frame for like that to really be conveyed. Like, sometimes in the live session, when you go through whatever track and you fall into a different groove, a different lick, that's the thing that sticks out, even though everything else was right. That weird approach to that really kicked it. And like, I was talking with someone not too long ago, and we were talking about like the skill set of just being able to critically analyze things, and like not necessarily in the sense of just being able to put it down, but in the sense of being able to look at what is appealing to this to you, and like what isn't, what and why isn't that. So this kind of like deeper thought of what doesn't work and why it doesn't work, not just being like it's green, I don't like green, whatever, you know what I mean, like whatever it may be, right? But
I'm not very good at reading. I'm pretty good at analyzing, but I think I just kind of have my own terminology for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Regardless of like analyzing, like, to like on a piece of sheet music, it's just like listening to what resonates with you. You know what I mean? Like that type of analyzation where it's like, yeah.
Understanding why we like something is it's such a difficult thing to pin down. It's like saying, why does iced tea taste good? Or why is the sunset beautiful? It's kind of it's a really hard thing to answer, but it all comes back to the way it makes you feel, right?
Right. Well, there's probably with why the sunset, appeals, aesthetically to human beings. Like, I mean, I feel like we can go down like a philosophical and like kind of scientific rabbit hole of like, sequences and like how light works and stuff. But that's like ultimately what it comes down to, is especially in things like music or personal taste, is what, is self-discovery, and I think what your record kind of promotes is that, you're taking sounds from your environment that you found that aren't just like, that made to one person be a mundane sound that they heard getting into their car before going to work, right? Or whatever it may be, and it in a non-gimmicky sense, in a non-Instagram reel where I decided to take my hi-hats off and put trash cans on instead. You know what I mean? Like,
it's been done, but has it been done musically?
Right. But I think you promote that type of thought and appreciation, and like, oh shit, I forgot where I was going to land that plane, but I think that's no, I got you. I appreciate that very much. I really hope that does come through. It was definitely my intention to be musical and not be gimmicky. The gimmicks are fun. The gimmicks are really cool, but there's got to be a point. And I think the point for me, the last record, was to tell a story, which is just, tell people what my surroundings of life are, and do it in a musical way is really what it was all about. There was also a lot of experimentation with the recording process
when I was tracking, some things would work and then some things would not work. And I was trying to, like you say, when we're analyzing things, figure out what is not working. Does this need something? Does this need something taken away? So for me, it was taking other pieces from other songs and just, stitching them on top of whatever I had going with a completely different song. And sometimes things would work. Sometimes things wouldn't work. Sometimes, you've got to be experimental and flexible enough with your own music to like really go drastically, because there's no rules when it comes to this stuff. When it comes to writing and composing, there's no rules.
It's very like William Burroughs, Bowie-ish with lyrics, but like in that sense where you're stitching it together and just seeing how it works, or Kid A-ish,
yeah.
But I remember where I was going to land that plane. But so like by it ultimately comes down to self-discovery, right? Why this appeals to you, in like the kind of analyzing that and being able to say something with it like you did and like are doing. So I don't know. I dig this record, man. And
thank you so much.
Before we kind of like, and I appreciate you taking time and chatting with me. And I've really this conversation kind of flew by, man.
Yeah, it did. Oh my God. Well, it's always good conversation with you, Zig, man. Thank you for having me.
Well, likewise, man. Do you got another? I mean, is there something cooking in the works for? Because I know there is. There always is, and I'm excited to whatever it is, jump into it when we get into it. But is there any like inklings of what you're working on next?
Yeah, I've got my psychedelic percussion ensemble with my buddy Sam Fishman.
That sounds.
Sam's a
sick.
drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam Fishman he's in a band called Driftwood. They're from out here in upstate New York. Great band. He and I have been working together for a few years now. He was actually on one of the tracks from my previous record, Perspectives. And so we've been doing a psychedelic percussion ensemble as a duo, and we just had our first live show at Bridge Street Theater out in Catskill, New York. We filmed it, and that's actually up on YouTube as of yesterday. And we're called Mendings of Time. And then, the season's kind of winding down as winter comes in, so there's not much touring going on, but I've been touring with the Town Pants up in Canada and upstate New York. So I'm also doing, as I said before, Sons of Grunge, which is a tribute to like Nirvana and Mudhoney and Sonic Youth and all that stuff. And what else have I got going on? I've been doing some video projects, filming stuff with, I can't say who because it's kind of private right now, but there have been some heroes in the building, some rebels going down in Syracuse, if that means anything to anybody. And and then, pretty much, well, let's see, let me look at my whiteboard and see what I have coming up. My buddy Michael Wu has some recordings coming out for his new record. And here in Syracuse, there's this 15-year-old guitar player named Dylan Michael. And now Dylan is a shredder, and he writes his own songs. And his father and I have known each other for a long time. His father's Mike Spadaro, and he's been playing bass for as long as I can remember. And so he's in the band, too, playing bass, and we're doing some jamming with him. And his friend Braylon, another killer guitar player, 15 years old. These kids are really, giving me hope for the future. And that's pretty much what I got going on. There's another video collaboration project I'm doing with my buddy Bob Goldberg from out in the Catskill, Woodstock area. And, seeing what I can do for my next record. I'm really trying to push this one right now, so I'm not so much writing as I am going to be probably in the next couple months when it gets, snow on the ground in winter.
Yeah, more time to like cook at it. But damn, dude, you got a lot going on.
Yeah, man. Anybody wants to hire me for drum, shoot me an email.
Boom, we'll put that all here. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for chatting. And whenever the next thing comes out, man, let's do it. Let's talk about it. Hell yeah.
Well, thanks again, Ziggy.
Thank you, man.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.